Hey, I am Walter, your communications director, and here is Anne Montgomery, our senior health policy expert.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I always love how you say good afternoon. It's good to see you.
Likewise.
We're here to talk about a kind of unhumorous topic. The big ugly bill that the GOP Congress enacted and which Trump signed into law is about exactly 1 year old this week. And we want to talk about its impacts. But the thing is, Anne, most of the provisions don't even take effect until 2027. But we're already seeing some of the negative consequences of this bill. And what I want to start with is Kaiser Family Foundation released a stat that 3.8 million Americans have already lost Medicaid coverage since the big ugly bill was enacted. So if the Medicaid cuts only go into effect in January 2027, why are we seeing the negative consequences already?
Some states are already tightening eligibility.
Ah.
Yes, by 2027, all states under federal law, under the big ugly bill, must require people to re-enroll twice a year, and they're also subject to work requirements.
New work requirements.
Right. Of 80 hours a month. But some states are already doing this, and those states are Nebraska, Montana, Arkansas, and Iowa. And so people are already facing difficulties, many more difficulties in maintaining their Medicaid coverage. So coverage is dropping already like a stone.
And let's just be clear. Some of the Republicans would tell you, and some of their followers might say, oh, well, these people shouldn't have been on Medicaid in the first place. They're either illegals or they're fraudsters. How can there be 3.8 million people who don't deserve to be on Medicaid, who just lost coverage already?
The truth is that Medicaid has always been designed to be a safety net program and to provide coverage to people who otherwise are going to have a really hard time getting health care insurance in the private market.
Right.
So those are disabled people, people who are, quite old in a nursing home, people who are medically frail. These are the folks who really need safety net coverage, and that is the problem with shredding Medicaid. They're not going to be able to find, and they're not finding, other sources of coverage.
And we're also talking about people in the gig economy who are trying to piece together different gigs to just scratch out a living. We're talking about single moms or single dads who can't afford daycare.
Yes.
Right? A lot of people just can't get employer-provided coverage.
That's correct. And that's why most states did decide under the Affordable Care Act to expand their Medicaid programs and include people up to a much higher percentage of poverty.
Another phenomenon we've seen as a fallout from the big ugly bill is rural hospitals and clinics are beginning to close all over the country, especially in red states. Why is that happening, again, before the big ugly bill even takes effect?
Part of the reason is that rural hospitals have been financially fragile for a really long time. Their operating margins tend to be in the 3% range. So any shrinkage of federal Medicaid funding, any shrinkage in the healthcare economy is going to hurt rural hospitals badly.
Are they closing in anticipation of the coming cuts, or what is it?
In some cases, hospitals and many other healthcare providers project ahead, of course, and they see that the federal funding is declining starting in 2027 in particular and going through 2034.
Right.
And they are, ahead of time. They are shrinking some of their services, stopping the expensive services for which they don't have much private coverage.
And, this is going to hurt people in red states probably the most.
Yes.
Right, which is one of the ironies, the supreme ironies of this. And again, just to reiterate, part of the reason for cutting Medicaid and SNAP by more than $1 trillion, is so that Congress could afford to give the wealthy another huge tax cut.
Yes, and that is
screwed up priorities.
Definitely screwed up priorities, and effectively it's shifting the burden to individuals in particular and to states and to local economies, which are projected to shrink, considerably as the federal funding declines. The federal government may be saving money, but it's on the backs of state economies, local economies, and individuals who are going to bear the cost, the harm, in the form of much less coverage that they can access, much higher household medical debt.
And again, these are not fraudsters and people who don't deserve coverage, right?
No, they
Or
are
illegals.
ordinary working Americans, and
Yeah.
most definitely not fraudsters who are going to have a really hard time figuring out where to go when Medicaid shrinks and when they can no longer afford private coverage on the state exchanges.
And just to be clear, analysts, when the big ugly bill was passed, called this the biggest cut to health care by the federal government ever. And they also called it the largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the wealthy in recent memory.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're dealing with, folks. Let's just call it like we see it. One final question for you, Anne. So, we're a seniors advocacy group, and we definitely care about the population at large, but how do these heinous Medicaid cuts, how could they especially hurt seniors?
Fortunately, Medicare has not been too much affected by the big ugly bill. So that's the good news. The bad news is that there are many seniors who are eligible for both Medicaid and Medicare.
The dual
so-called-
eligibles, yeah.
Exactly, the so-called dual eligibles. That population, the dual eligibles, is going to have a harder time because they will find their access to certain kinds of programs like the Medicare Savings Program, which saves them money on their prescription drugs, curtailed. They will also find that, for example, in nursing homes, for which Medicaid pays about 60% of the bill,
Right.
those folks are going to see their access to nursing homes perhaps somewhat curtailed because the reimbursement rates are going to drop. So low-income seniors are going to struggle in this environment because of the big ugly bill.
And it's not just low-income seniors. Like, there are middle-class seniors who deplete their savings and need to go into a Medicaid-funded long-term care facility or to get Medicaid home-based care. So when you cut Medicaid by nearly $1 trillion, you are cutting long-term care for seniors, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
It's
Yes,
disgusting.
and particularly those seniors who want to live at home, which is most seniors.
Right.
So the home and community-based services are unfortunately in Medicaid going to be on the chopping block. States are going to be forced to severely curtail home care services that allow people to stay out of nursing homes if that's where they, would prefer not to be.
And we know that majorities of seniors want to have care at home rather than go into a facility. And sometimes the care could be more efficacious.
Absolutely.
Sometimes.
Most people would prefer to age in place in their own home.
Age in place.
And this is going to make it much more difficult for them to do so. At a point when, of course, we will have about 20% of the population that's 65 and older. So this is going to hit boomers quite hard. And they're going to realize, perhaps as it happens, that their access is not what they thought it was, and they're going to be, left without another plan.
So thank you, Trump and the Republicans in Congress, for helping to further enrich billionaires while cutting the social safety net for everyone else. All right. Well, thank you, Anne. So we cycle our experts through, and we'll see you again in a few weeks.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your coming in. All right, everybody. See you next time.